Hi, we're here. We're live together. Everybody say hi to Matt. Matt, say hi.
Hi.
We're so excited. I'm super pumped to be here. Obviously, if you guys don't know who this is my husband. This is the badass business bro behind Badass Business Babe. And obviously, today we're talking about strategy. Nat's going to lead the way. He's going to take charge. Rock it with us.
Rock it.
We're ready to rock. You know, it's so funny because, see, look, there are the comments.
Yeah.
He's new to this, right? So bear with us as we rock through this challenge today to offer you guys tips, tricks, information centered around strategy. And the reason I wanted to bring Matt on was because he is a big part of why our business is doing what it's doing today. And without that strategy and without that structure, we can't create the businesses of our dreams. So he's going to take it away. He's going to lead you guys through a little bit of a journey today, talking about problem solving and how to turn your problems into a profit. I'm really excited to be here.
All right, so I guess I'll just go with it. So for those of you who don't know, obviously I work behind the scenes at Badass Business Babe. I'm definitely not the face of it in any way, shape, or form. Some of you have heard me on the podcast before, so you know a little bit about probably what I'll talk about. So to start, basically, I'm not coming off to talk about anything woo related, right? If you came here looking for that, you're definitely not getting it today. So there's a couple of phrases that you're probably going to hear me say over and over and over again today. And one of them, Coraline put it in one of the graphics, which is feelings aren't facts. And as much as I think that pisses people off when I say that to them, it's really helpful to be able to know the difference between a feeling and a fact. It makes a really big difference in your business. Before I started doing this with Lauren in this business, I actually used to teach problem solving at my old company. I was part of a board for the Americas. We worked on factories from all the way in South America into Canada.
Make sure you talk loud so people can hear you.
I will make sure I talk loud. So basically, what I'm looking to instill in everyone today is to have that mindset when they're problem solving, to decipher between what is a feeling and what is a fact. And it's really difficult sometimes to know the difference. So I'm sure if I speak and I say, correlation isn't causation, everyone's going to say, yeah, I know that. No shit, right? But it's actually really difficult to know the difference sometimes. And part of knowing the difference between what is a feeling and what is a fact is the difference between making money and not making money. And I say that because when we look at our businesses and we're launching products or we're making a new product or something, what do we typically always do? We typically create this product based on the feeling that someone needs this.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's
like what I do all the time.
Everyone typically does. And that doesn't make it wrong, right? So I'm not going to say that anyone's gut is wrong. I'm not going to say that feelings are incorrect. I'm just trying to say that feelings aren't facts. So when we talk about it in terms of problem solving and trying to make money, the biggest issue that I think people have is they totally steer clear of data. Everyone typically steers clear of data, and it's the biggest issue because data is a direct indicator of your performance in the past and therefore can be attributed to performance in the future. So this goes true with anything, whether you're talking about how many people are watching this right now, if you're talking about, how many people have opened an email, all these things.
How many likes you get on your Instagram post.
Yeah. And, and these are all trends that we want to be capturing. So when we're talking about profits, so one thing that Lauren does and that I don't do, we have very different mindsets when it comes to this, is Lauren will say, we're making $80,000 next month.
It's happening.
Right. And it's like, it's great. It's great that I'd be able to have that mindset. And it's great. And so what I always reply back with is, great, where's it coming from? Because part of, if we want to bring manifesting, and as part of manifesting isn't just you open up your soul to the world and the world just says, whoa, they wanted $80,000. I better give it to them. Bullshit. It doesn't happen, right? You have to know where stuff is coming from. And in order to actually, there's a difference between a goal and a dream, right? So I set goals for the business. Mine are based on solid facts, and Lauren's the dreamer, and dreams aren't necessarily founded upon historical data.
Right. So this would be me waking up one day and saying, I'm going to hit $80,000 this month. And he's looking at numbers and data and saying, well, where is that going to come from?
Right. So when we talk about this with problem solving, the best way for me, trying to think of a really good example where this feelings versus facts gets applied. And the best way for me, I think, to instill this into people is when people aren't buying something. So I hear from people all the time, they aren't buying this because they don't like me. They don't like the content. I didn't reach enough people. And those are all actually feelings unless you have the data, right? So there's been numerous times where we have, let's say, launched a new product and it bombed. We've had a couple of sales where the sales were generally bombs, right? And what is it? Is it people don't like the product? And not necessarily. I mean, some data is hard to capture, and that's other people's feelings is typically hard to capture, right? So you typically end up working with actual facts. And the best way to look at these facts, we all look at open rates of our emails, right? If we send out emails, we see the open rate of it, right? So I know based on our email list, when we release a new product, how many people are going to open it and approximately how many of those people actually go to purchase it. We know these things, so the problem for us is being able to figure out when we launch new products, is it the audience was wrong? Audience was too small? Was the content what I thought people needed versus what they want? Because that's always a big issue, right? I mean, I think we all can all admit to this. We'll go into something, wanting something in particular, especially coaches out there, right? Coaches will always be the first ones to say that people come to them with a specific want, but they actually need something else, right? I want to be able to do this, but they need something else. And selling to people's needs versus their wants typically doesn't work.
No. You want to give people what they want because that's what's going to make them buy. But you also want to give them what they need after they purchase.
Yeah, well, typically people don't know what they need. So feelings aren't facts is something that, we have our group meetings, but I say all the time, we'll be talking about something. And I always say feelings aren't facts, right? They didn't do this because this happened. And I say, well, how do you know that? Right? You always have to say, how do you know that? So there's a lot of different tools in problem solving, and I'm not going to go into talking about almost any of them. We're going to go real high level on this, right? Because there's for every screw, there's a nut. And just because one tool is appropriate in one situation doesn't mean it's appropriate in another situation. But so the best way to approach things is always deciphering whether it's a feeling or if it's a fact. The best way to have facts is to collect data. If you don't collect data, one, you don't know where you are, and if you don't know where you are, you don't know where you're going. It's really important. Even if you're not doing anything with the data, I always tell people just to collect it. Always collect it. On a daily basis, I collect a number of people out of the email list, the reached followers in a couple of different areas, number of sales that we did, and I lay those over sales over time so I could track our rates and yada, 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 yada. So I collected a shitload of data. I collect more data than probably most people would want or need to. A lot of the data I collect is more for my own entertainment because I am a numbers guy and I do like numbers. But having that data available, whether you use it now or you use it in the future, you need to have data. The great thing about Facebook is it has your data. I will say this about Facebook, though. They do change your numbers. So if you're looking at historical Facebook data, just so you guys know, specifically on reach and followers, they change that number so that it always looks like you're trending up. So if you collect the data day of, it will be net different the next day. They do change the data. So it's always important to have your own data. Now, someone just said data doesn't lie, and it's really the truth. Because another thing I was going to talk about is people always say, you can make the numbers say anything you want, which is kind of true, but they're not wrong. So if you get a number and it's not correct, it's because you fucked up. You told it to tell you this, right? 1 + 1 = 2. No one's going to argue that, and that's true across anything, right? It's all about the data that you put into it. If you're looking for something that tells you what I did was correct, you'll find it. If you're looking for something to support the idea that you're wrong, you'll find it.
And what are you looking for in your business?
Right. And so the trick is being able, so it's like half science, half art, right? The science part is the math behind it, knowing, we won't go into a lot of it, but if you know standard deviations and sigmas. If you know that stuff, you'll generally know proportionally where you're going to be at when you're setting budgets. You'll know proportionally how many people are going to be opening things. You'll be able to do all this information, but I don't know.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, this is what I think is really important to take away from this, because Matt's space of we need data, we need strategy, we need records overwhelmed the fuck out of me, because that's not how I operate. I'm the artist of the business. I think it's all important you guys identify, are you the artist? Are you the entrepreneur? Are you the business owner? I'm more of the artist. I create and I just wake up and say, what do I want to do today? And he's the businessman, right?
Well, everyone wants to be the business owner, and no one wants to run the business.
Yeah.
You know, that's the big trend, right? And it's important to realize that, you know, we all have, I've noticed that everyone always seems to defer to Apple, right? When everyone talks about their dreams, they always go, Apple was a leader, Apple did this. You know what Apple also does? They collect the fuck out of your data.
Yeah.
Right?
They track things, because you can't, what do you say? You can't fix what you can't measure?
You can't fix what you can't measure. So you always got to quantify things. And there's things that people say you can't quantify. Like, this irks me when Lauren does this, because it's not true, is pain. Put pain on a scale, right? I'm doing this and it's causing me pain. What is pain? All right. And it's really easy to define. So typically we're going to define pain as time. So when we do things, there's one thing that we have done with our team that I think everyone should typically do, and it's learning how to prioritize your problems. And so I think you did it in one of your teachings. You started touching on it. So you basically create 3 categories. There's going to be time, and you scale it between 1, 5, and 9. It's not 1 through 9. It's 1, 5, or 9. And the reason why you're doing this is if you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you're going to say, well, is it a 7 or is it an 8? Is it a 5 or a 4? You get down to the real nitty gritty, and it's not important. So we would put down, you know, if we have a problem, how much does it cost to implement? You know, 1, it's free, 0 cost to implement, you know, big whoop. You know, 5 being it's going to cost, you know, $500, and then 9 would be $1,000. And so you're going to rate your problem on that scale. And then another one would be time, the amount of time it's costing you by not having this problem fixed. You know, is it just annoying? Does it only cost you 5 minutes a day?
Maybe we could put some examples on the table for our followers. What would be a problem, some of the ones that we've worked through over time in our business? Yeah,
we could. I mean, I think that's a tough, I don't want to get too deep into that, because that's a more complicated thing. But basically what this does, I don't know if probably no one's familiar with manufacturing terms, but if you were to do what's called an FMEA, a failure modes and effects analysis, this is essentially what you're doing. And when you do a failure modes and effects analysis, you're basically saying, I know I have problems, but you rank them, and whichever one, that number, so you take these 3 things, we would do time, cost to implement, and the amount of money it's costing us, or something like that, right? And you multiply those numbers and you come up with a number. Basically anything over like 250 is like a fucking problem, like something that needs to get addressed.
Well, maybe we should go back a little bit, because I think some of the feelings we have around data and addressing problems and ranking problems and quantifying things, I think we get overwhelmed really easily. So
yeah, but I don't want to get into that.
Okay. Well, I think we should a little bit, to explain to the audience what has to be recognized in your business, right? So if you're saying, well, Lauren, I don't know what to track. Lauren, I don't know what to measure. What are some of the first things that somebody can start to measure in their business? Yeah,
and the reason why I didn't want to get into that yet is because what you're tracking and and problem solving are different, right? So what we're going to be tracking, it really depends upon what you're selling. Right, you know, if you have a Facebook group, you're certainly going to track reach. Reach is really important to track, because tracking reach actually tells you basically when you're getting repetitive. So your reach dies significantly as we get repetitive. So I always track reach. I always track the number of followers in the group. And more importantly, what I do is I weigh the data. And when I say weigh the data, I mean I don't just take an average. I do a trailing average. So depending upon what I'm looking for, I'll do like a 10-day trailing average and a 60-day trailing average. And this actually goes back to stock market analysis, if anyone's familiar with that. So you have your 10-day moving average, and when it goes up past your 60-day, you're basically doing really good. What you're doing is correct. And then if it trails below it, you know, you're doing something wrong. And for us, we know, because we collect the data, that weekends we always drop down. You know, no one's on, I don't say no one's on Facebook on the weekends, but no one seems to give a shit what you post on the weekends. You know, so you would think that people are at work during the week, that they're not going to be paying attention to what you post. It's really quite the opposite. And it actually makes sense, because I think back to when I was working, I don't know about you guys, but if I was in front of someone, I'd have my phone in front of my face, right? And you're doing, looking on Facebook or whatever. That's what everyone else is doing. And on the weekends, everyone else is out doing their own thing. And so what we see is our data drops significantly on the weekend. So we don't launch stuff on the weekend. We avoid weekends like the plague. You know, you notice that the sales that we don't do sales during the weekend, and we don't do all these things because we know it contributes to a negative correlation in our numbers. You know, the weekend is not the cause. The weekend is a symptom, really. You know, and this is the difference between symptom and root cause is another thing that I really want to talk about. Is people often focus on symptoms as if it's the problem. So what we talk about is a root cause analysis. So there's different ways to getting to determine your root cause, and the general theory behind it is called root cause analysis. There's a lot of different ways to do it, and the purpose of determining your root cause is if you know what your root cause is, you in theory will never have that problem again. So the way that I typically speak about it is in terms of people getting sick, right? People getting sick is the best example of this. So let's say you caught the flu or something, right? So a symptom of it is you know, headache, you can have a fever, you're gonna have all these things. And so typically what people do is you say, you have that problem, you have a headache and you have the flu, you should take a Tylenol. It'll get rid of it, but that doesn't get rid of the flu. All that does is it gets rid of the symptoms. In a business, we do the exact same thing. Well, people address the symptoms and not the root cause. The root cause of the flu, as I came into contact with someone who has the flu. If I don't want to get the flu next year, I don't hang around people who have the flu.
So if we're looking at why somebody doesn't buy a program, right? I know this is a problem that you guys identify, but it's actually a symptom, right? If someone's not buying your program, why? What is happening in those elements that is causing somebody to not invest? Is the problem you don't have an audience? Is the problem that your content is poor? Is your problem that people aren't liking your sales page? What is the problem versus the symptom of no one's buying my stuff, right? And so I think this is a really powerful point. It's like looking deeper into what's going on in your business rather than the surface level of I'm not making the money I want to make.
Yeah, it's easy to do, and that's what everyone does. You know, so one of the real simple tricks to getting to root cause is if you came up with the solution as soon as a problem was brought to you, it's probably not correct. You know, we typically will always jump to a solution first. And we do that for a couple of reasons. And one of them is because we jump to what we understand. And that's typically what caused the problem in the first place, is there's something you don't understand that's causing it, right? So one of the things that we do is say, course sales are down. We won't use, you know, people aren't buying the course. We'll say, let's pretend that we track course sales, and course sales have been going up 10% every single month. And then 1 month, our course sales, instead of going up 10%, are now down 20%. So then the question you ask is real simple. You're going to turn into a 5-year-old and you're going to say, why?
Why?
Why did course sales go down 20%? Right? And so there's the direct correlation to course sales going down is people haven't purchased it. Or is it because people are shifting to purchasing lower cost courses? You know, there's two different ways to look at it. I could have course sales on, you know, our courses run the gamut from, you know, $7 up to, you know, power bundles, $250 or whatever it is. So if I have 10 people buy the power bundle, that's a lot of money, right? And so course sales will look like they went up. But if I look at the number of people the next month and I only got one person buying the power bundle, but I had, you know, 100 people buy Crickets to Clients, course sales by dollar went down, but course sales total went way up. You know, and so we typically, you'll see this shift. And so it's important to say, why did course sales go down? Did people stop buying so many products, or did people just start buying more lower end products?
Yeah.
And so then the question is, why? Why did they not buy the more expensive product if that's what it was? Why are they buying this lower cost product? you know. And let's just say it's because, who knows, maybe you had a new product out, right? You launch a new course and you have a new course sale that goes out. Anytime we launch a new course, our course sales spike, right? And typically what will happen is people are always attracted to what's new and shiny, so people will go towards that product. So if that product just came out, people will typically go to that product just because it's new. So this is part of where, when I say weighing your data comes in, because if you look at data on a regular basis, right, it jumps up and down. And then when you put it into the last trailing 10 days or last trailing 60 days, you'll get a flat line. And so with this flat line, it should always be going up. It takes the noise out. Because sometimes you don't have a problem. It just looks like a problem, right? Mm-hmm. This is that feelings aren't facts, So it gets a little tricky to decipher. So one of the other things I really wanted to touch upon, which is another one of my phrases that I say a lot, is hope is for people that don't have a plan. Right? So part of problem solving isn't just actually having a fucking problem that you have to solve. It's avoiding problems, period. Right? I mean, that's the best way to do it, is just avoiding problems, period, which is not typically how I see people operate in this space. Most people typically, they just launch something and they have a fucking problem.
Yeah, they're like, let me try this, see if it works.
Yeah, and part of problem solving is making sure you don't have problems to begin with. There's a lot of different approaches to this, and so planning is important. And it's very hard to plan without having the data. Because once again, if you don't know where you are, how do you know where you're going? Right? Mm. And so people that I want to make 6 figures this year is a hope. That saying at face value is a hope, right? The plan is I'm going to make 6 figures this year because I'm going to increase my email list by 20. And on that email list, I'm going to offer more products. And of those products that I offer, I know 2% of them are going to buy. And so at this rate, right? So there's a plan. There's a plan. It's not just, I'm going to put something out and people are going to love it. That's not a plan. The only plan is that you're making something and sending it out. That's not a plan. And a lot of people operate in this space of hope under the false belief that this is a plan that we're going to roll into. And then everyone's susceptible to it. I mean, it happens with us all the time, right? The trick is to be able to catch yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have some questions. I know you guys have been dropping questions in the comments, and I think it'd be cool for us to kind of cover some of the things people are asking. So someone had asked if we're just getting started on tracking, what do we track? And I think the first thing to track obviously are your sales, right? How many sales per month, how many customers you have. I think when we talk about reach though, what specifically should people be tracking on Instagram or on Facebook or on
Well, it's literally, if you go to Facebook, it's literally titled reach.
Okay.
And so it's just the number of people that are watching or viewing your post or whatever it is.
Cool.
And it's what's more important is you collect the data and that is going to be collected from something you want to be moving towards. If you want more people to be following you, you should be tracking followers. If you want to collect more sales, you should definitely be collecting sales data. Mm. It's all typically going to be directed towards what your focus is on. Because whatever you're focused on, right? People say this all the time. Whatever you're focused on, that's where the energy is, right? And it's the same thing with data collection, right? Because you're going to get tired of seeing your followers not move if you're tracking it every day, right? So then you end up putting more effort into that. If your followers is way up or you're not selling anything, you're going to start focusing on your course sales and you're going to get tired of that not going up, right? So you're focusing on it, so that's where it goes.
Yeah. So I think when I started my business, just to share with you guys, before Matt was involved, I tracked every month, and I wasn't tracking daily, I was tracking monthly, which isn't really as effective as the detailed data of day by day, but I would track my Instagram followers in an Excel spreadsheet. I would track my email list in an Excel spreadsheet, and I would track my Facebook group in an Excel spreadsheet. And that allowed me to really understand that when my followers were increasing, my income was increasing, and I could see the connection between those two things. I could also identify if I had a really big income month, if I had a month where I landed a lot of one-on-one clients, I could go back to my data of list gathering and say, wow, I had a really big amount of people join my Facebook group that month. And that's where my clients came. So maybe I should focus more on that, right? It's about really trying to read between the lines of like where your growth happens in terms of your audience, but also where your growth happens in terms of your income, and connecting those dots be a really powerful thing. So to start, if you aren't tracking anything yet, track your followers, track your email list. And if you can't, or if you don't feel comfortable doing it day to day, do it monthly so you can evaluate what works and what doesn't. We just had 12 days of Bizmas, right? We exploded our following, and we can see that in our data that, wow, this month there was a huge increase in followers. So that worked. So what else can we do that can grow our following? And it's about letting that data leave clues for us. So let me see. Is there anything you want to add to that, honey?
No, but I see some people are asking for specific steps. So specific steps and understanding how to implement the steps.
Mm-hmm.
So not really a thing, unfortunately. So there are a couple tools you use. You know, I lean heavily towards manufacturing and industrial tools because that's where my background is, right? So I worked in aerospace, and this is what I did in the aerospace industry. And I would visit our sister plants, and I would visit our suppliers, and I would analyze their business, whether it was a manufacturing issue or a data issue, whatever. And so that's what I would do. So I am very much geared towards pushing people in that area, which I think is actually a really good area to look in, because if we all know about manufacturing, it's dying in the United States. So in order to stay on top, you always have to be the best. So one of the tools that I actually utilize with our team here that they don't know that I utilize is it's called an 8D. And so if you look it up, I think you could probably look it up on Wikipedia. It's called 8, as in the number 8D, and it stands for 8 disciplines. And so these are 8 specific steps that you would use to solve a problem. So, you know, first you have a team that you're going to use to solve it, right? So ours would typically be the entire team. Sometimes it's not. And then you define the problem, what the actual root cause is. And if you do it correctly, it gets really, really complicated. So I'm going to recommend people don't do it correctly, because you're going to get confused. Because part of this is what's called a 3x5 why analysis. And the 3x5 why analysis is really going to fuck people up. So I won't tell you what to do other than just keep asking yourself why, right? And so that's
always keep asking why.
Yeah, you keep asking why until you can't really ask anymore. The rule is 5 times. So the rule is 5 times. You don't have to ask why 5 times. You know, you'll know when you hit it, because you can't go back any farther. You know, when you answer why, the forward statement should always be therefore. You know, I didn't make sales because, or I didn't hit the core sales number because core sales were focused on the lower numbers. And so the reverse statement is core sales were on the lower income product, therefore core sales were down. And so that's how you know that you're doing it correctly, is you ask that opposite statement, and should always be able to make sense going forward and going backwards. So the AD asks you to, you're going to define the problem. One of the things that you're going to do is you're going to prevent the problem from occurring again. So this is a preemptive change. So for a lot of us, this is going to be, you had an email list. Let's say we all have these email funnels, and these email funnels didn't perform because the headline used a very specific phrase. So going forward, you would say, I'm never using that phrase again. You know, and that's part of your problem solving tool, is learning from past mistakes and applying it to future items. Another one is going to be containment. So if we have course sales, let's say, someone complains, this happens from time to time. Someone will say that I didn't get access to the course. So the first thing that you do is containment. And this containment says, who else ordered this course? Do they have access to it? Making sure that everything is contained. And when you make sure everything contained, you also know who to address in the future. If that problem has expanded beyond a single person, you reach out to them, you said, hey, blah, 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 blah. We owe you, you know, X amount of dollars. Here you go. Sorry, this happened. Here's your access to your course, whatever. So it's all about containment, preventing it from happening in the future. And part of preventing it from happening in the future is changing something that I think most people don't have, which is going to be standard operating procedures.
Well, you're going to confuse people with this, so we won't even go into that.
But so the gist of it is with standard operating procedures is you really see it in corporate life more than you do in these small businesses, because we're a little more, much more nimble, right? But in big businesses, right, if you're going to do something, there's regulations that tell you how to do it. And so you would just change it so that you or prevent you from doing that again.
So how do we take this, what feels like an overwhelming topic, and start to apply it to our business? I think the first thing that really affected me was this simple question of why. right? If we stick with the overall symptom of our business as a problem and we say, oh, I'm not making the money I want, or I don't have the audience I want, or I'm not getting the customers I want, going deeper and always asking, well, why? What's going on? Why is this happening? And then you may say, oh, well, I don't really have the strong audience I want. Why? Well, because I don't know how to grow my Instagram. Why? Right? And going deeper of recognizing, like, where does the problem lie?
And I would be even so bold as to say you jumped in and didn't, you were talking, you screwed up when you said, I don't know how to use Instagram. Because that's a step too far.
Yeah. Well, that's always me. Like, I'm always going to go into that place. And his job with me is, like, very much bringing me back into that space of being logical in your business.
And it's important to know that you don't do this on your own.
Yeah, do it with somebody.
If you're trying to solve a problem, you should. Some of us who are working literally on our own, and we're the only person running our business, it does get really difficult because you'll fall into your own trap, and it's very hard to convince yourself that you're wrong, right? And so it's always better to invite someone else to the party.
Yeah.
To go over this, because like Lauren said, well, I'll catch her jumping to a clues. I don't know how to do Instagram. That's a feeling, right? That is the definition of a feeling. Anytime you say I feel or I think, I can tell you, right, that's a feeling.
Yeah. And a lot of us are trying to problem solve based on feelings, right? Like, I'm overwhelmed, or I'm stressed, or I don't feel successful. And then it's like, okay, well, where are the actual problems there to quantify that issue, right? And just going deeper into recognizing that. A lot of you guys are asking, like, what systems we use, and Matt tracks everything through Excel. A lot of people are asking for Excel sheet examples.
Yeah, I do everything through Excel, and I create my own formulas and charts and graphs through Excel. There's no reason why you should need anything more than Excel, personally. I think a lot of people probably aren't comfortable using Excel. And once again, my background is geared towards Excel. You know, I used to use Minitab, but Minitab is a statistical software. I use Minitab and QStat. So those are two different statistical softwares that are way above and beyond what we would need here. Those were more like if you're looking at really complex, you know, correlation studies, and you're doing, you know, design of experiments and stuff, which none of us are doing, and there's no real reason for us to do it. So mostly it's just track it through Excel. Determine what weight you want to use, because you never want live data. It's actually really bad. Live data is terrible. No one makes decisions off what happened the very previous day.
Yeah, and I think too, it's about, you want to be able to go back and look at history. So even if you're in a place where numbers overwhelm you and you don't know how to read them or create information in between the lines, your first job is just to capture. So even if you set the intention and say, okay, every night before I go to bed, before my business day is over, I'm going to track the numbers from the day before, or I'm going to write down the email list number from the day before. And then you can hire somebody that can read the data for you and create projections and predict where your business is going, or recognize issues in the flow of things. I know a lot of you guys are saying, I don't have a Matt. I don't have a Matt. You don't need a Matt, right? Like, I mean, he's great. I need him. I love him. He's my husband. But I think the first thing to recognize, we all start somewhere, right? We all start in a place of not understanding. And if you can just give yourself that grace of saying, okay, I've never tracked anything before, but I'm going to start trying to pay attention to this, that will really help you as you grow.
Yeah, and I think also what's important to know is people have a tendency to change strategy before collecting the data.
Yes.
You know, things take time.
Yeah.
Things take time. So if you just changed your strategy in the very next day you looked at it and it didn't work, that doesn't mean that strategy doesn't work. It doesn't mean more people won't open up the email next time. You know, there's so many variables that go into this, but that's typically what people do.
This is so important. People
will change something and they say, didn't work, and then they go to the next thing. And didn't work, didn't go to the next thing. And you actually end up creating your own problem. You know, they talk about this when you fly helicopters, actually. So part of flying a helicopter is that helicopters aren't out of control. The operator's out of control. Little corrections in a helicopter make humongous changes. And the second you stop trying to control it, that's the second that the helicopter just hovers there. You know, anyone who's ever flown a helicopter, which I'm assuming is probably not many here, but if you've ever flown a helicopter, it's little itty bitty changes make gigantic shifts.
Yes.
And so people then they overcorrect. It's just like getting in a car that's going sideways. People overcorrect and then they spin. And we do the same thing in business.
Yeah.
We just don't see it because we're not crashing into objects.
Right.
You know, in a car, you see when you're overcorrecting because you will literally fucking crash. In business, if you overcorrect, what happens? Typically, nothing.
Yeah. And so the analogy here that I can feel, because Matt doesn't work so much with our clients as I do, but I can feel when someone comes to me and goes, oh, no one's buying my program, it didn't work. Well, hold on. Like, did you just launch that yesterday? Like, how do you know that that's not working? Or, oh, I'm trying this new strategy to grow my Instagram. It's not working. How long have you been implementing it? And so it's like, you have to give yourself the grace of committing to a strategy for at least a month before you start to see the results of that shift.
Good thing to talk about.
It's so common.
We'll bring Apple back in. We'll look at Apple iPhone sales. If anyone follows Apple iPhone sales, what's going on with the iPhone right now? Sales suck, right? But the sales have sucked for the last 3 or 4 launches, and then they end up basically hitting record numbers again. But you don't see Apple coming out and saying, holy shit, we got to change this phone, we got to do everything, blah, 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 blah.
Our business is failing.
Right. The market, because the market changes, right? Everything. I mean, how many of you have been to a website where it looked one way one day, and the very next day you go to it and you go, I don't like it. And you didn't go back for a little bit, but it's your favorite website or whatever, and you end up going back there, and eventually you just get used to it, and everything's back to normal. I mean, everyone does the same thing, right? It's all socioeconomic trends.
Yeah. So be patient. Start to implement tracking your data. Start to recognize when you have a pain point in your business, going deeper and saying, well, what is the real issue here, right? What is actually the problem in the business? Yeah, Shannon says, Lauren, when you were throwing spaghetti on the wall, how long would you try something before changing what you were doing? Well, I had this
15 minutes.
Yeah, I had this problem. Like, this was like a couple of months ago, we created this email funnel, and we spent all this time doing it, and then I was like, it's not working, shut it off. We didn't give it any time to get implemented. We didn't give it any time to track it. And so rule of thumb for me now, I wait at least a month. I commit to something, I wait at least a month before I start to change and evolve things and shift. And that could be anything regarding Instagram strategy, the type of photos I'm using, the type of content I'm creating. It could be the e-guides I'm trying to use to grow my email list. But I commit to one strategy, and then I see how it affects us after at least a month, sometimes 2.
And it gets confusing to other people when you constantly change.
Yeah.
It's important to remember how would you behave if this was happening to you instead of you doing it to someone. You know?
Yeah.
It's really important to be able to put yourself in the other shoe there, on the other shoe, on the other foot, whatever it is. You know, be able to switch positions and really say if someone was constantly changing what I'm looking at, how would I respond to it?
Yeah. So shifting from a hobby into an actual business strategy, right? I think that's really what we're kind of talking about here, because there are so many of you that are just playing in your businesses, and you set these intentions of, I want to make 6 figures, I want to make multiple 6 figures. And going back to what we talked about in the beginning, where is that coming from, right? Where is that income coming from? And one great exercise you could do is to sit down and say, okay, what programs am I launching next year? When am I launching them? How many people do I expect to bring into these programs? And then let me calculate what that actually could possibly bring in. And that's a great place to start pulling you out of that feeling element and putting you into more of a strategic place where you can recognize, hey, I want this. Where would I have to launch things? What would the year have to look like for me to actually receive that? You know, putting yourself in that strategy.
So Selena, just so you know, it's 8D, D as in duck. So if you just Google 8D.
8D analysis.
It will show what you're looking for.
Yeah. Okay. So do we want to talk about the relationship element of working together? Because I feel like before we went live here,
we talk about the relationship element every single time. I don't think it's necessary.
Okay, we won't talk about it, but you could go listen to us on the podcast because we talk about that a lot. We have a couple podcast episodes on the Badass Business podcast where we answer questions about what it's like to work together, because that's something that people always ask, right? So super important. Anything you want to add? Or?
No, I think that's the gist of it. I mean, I think what I'm just trying to put forward in my whole spiel here was that If you're running a business, you have to treat it like a business, which unfortunately means you have to do the stuff that doesn't typically drive people, right? You have to look at data. You have to do systematic problem solving. You have to do all these things that typically people don't like. But if you want to be like Apple, you want to be like Microsoft, or you want to be whatever, name a company. If you want to be like them, you can't avoid the practices that they've done to get there. You scale them to fit your company. You know, that's the biggest thing. No company is doing something you can't do at a different scale. You know, and so it's the stuff that typically no one likes, that running a business that's absolutely necessary to go to the next level. You cannot be at amateur hour and get to the next level. You have to make it more professional. You have to learn how to set budgets. Oh, the other thing I want to talk about real quick, there's a big difference between gross income and net income. You know, everyone always does this. No, as a business, you could tell people your net income or your gross income till the cows come home. It makes no difference. But from your own perspective, if you're not analyzing things based off of net numbers, you're doing yourself a disservice. You have to look at net. You have to look after expenses. You have to look after this, blah, 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 blah. I always see people throwing out numbers and they're gross figures. And gross figures do not help you guide your business because they're inflated. They're always inflated. Mm-hmm. You need to be based in reality when you're doing these problem solving skills. You have to be based in reality, which means net numbers.
Yeah. Yeah, that really irks me too, because I'll see coaches who are like, oh, we had a 6-figure launch. And I'm like, you spent $60,000 on Facebook ads. So like, did you really have a 6-figure launch?
And realized and unrealized income. I mean, I'm not going to get into it, but really the important thing is realized net income. And anyone who doesn't know what realized and unrealized is, basically realized is cash in hand and unrealized is like an IOU. So it's payment plans. You know, you might have sold a $2,000 program, but they only gave you $500. So your realized income is $500, your unrealized is $2,000. And people tend to use unrealized to gross. And what's really important when you're setting these numbers is realized net. You know, don't inflate numbers for planning purposes. It's such a disservice.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to be able to really be aware of where your money is going. Selena says, I think Lauren and Matt would produce a great mastermind group together. Thank you for your gifts. Yeah, we've been talking about that actually, because he has, as you can see, he has such knowledge and such resource, wide variety of information and strategy. And I'm really in that space of the artistry of, you know, the soulful growth and expansion of the business. And I think it's allowed us to work really well together. Yeah, we've been talking about it, high level mastermind. I think it'd be fun. Okay, guys, I think we'll wrap up today. Any questions you guys have for Matt, you could drop them in the comments here in this video. And yeah.
Just so everyone knows too, I don't accept friend requests, just so everyone's clear, because I have been getting some since we posted this. I don't accept friend requests. It's not meant to, you know, discourage anyone. I am part of the Badass Business Babe Facebook group though. I do go on there on a daily basis because I do check the data on a daily basis. So I am in there. So it is possible if you want to reach out to me that you could reach out to me there. Otherwise,
he has a private life.
A very private guy, yeah.
As opposed to me, I'm like airing all my dirty laundry out all the time. Yeah, we're total opposites in that way. So he wanted to say that because he was getting so many Facebook requests from you guys. And he's like, I feel bad, I'm saying no. Okay, I love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Tomorrow we have Melanie Ann Layer on. Yes, babe?
Just real quick, a lot of people are asking for good resources. This is probably more than you could handle, but if you look up Six Sigma, Six Sigma is going to talk about all these different ways to problem solve using analytics. All right, so there's going to be a billion books on it, and even the one for dummies is going to be extremely complicated. And so everything that I'm talking about is based on Six Sigma. So I myself am what's called a Six Sigma black belt, And so these are the skills that I used and learned doing Six Sigma. I trained people in Six Sigma. So if you find a book on Six Sigma, this is going to be what I'm talking about. It's going to be some really complicated statistical stuff that's going to really kind of suck the energy out of anyone. But if you could find one, I don't know of one any offhand that's really simple. All of mine are over 1,000 pages. You know, they're horrible.
But that D8 thing that you
8D.
8D.
And 8D is tied into Six Sigma.
Yeah.
Six Sigma is the all-encompassing approach.
Catherine says that you need to create a course for all the hubbies at home trying to be our managers.
Yeah, Lauren's been trying to get me to reach out and help more people too.
Oh my God, I love that idea. We could do like recorded trainings for like strat.
Yeah, so Margaret's a Six Sigma green belt.
Oh, cool.
So I mean, anyone who has those,
You're a black belt?
I'm a black belt, yeah. So anyone who has that skill set is there's not a big difference between a green belt and a black belt. Black belts are typically what they consider project managers for the most part.
Okay. Thank you guys. Love you all so much. This was awesome. I loved this. This was really fun, babe. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
You guys for sticking around. And we'll talk to you soon. We'll see you tomorrow for day 5 of 12 Days of Business. Day 5. Melanie and Larry's going to fucking crush it. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Peace.
Peace.